So I was gonna initially make this video for people who know about the Dragon's Dogma 2 series, who are really up to date about what's going on and understand all the references behind the trailer, but then I realized that people who don't play Dragon's Dogma, or people who don't know what Dragon's Dogma is, have no idea why they should be excited about it, or they just don't know enough about Dragon's Dogma 2 to understand any of the references given in other trailer analysis videos, or they don't have the context that they need in order to make sense of what's really going on. So that's what this video is really going to be about, is giving context to people who just don't have any, who want to really know more about Dragon's Dogma 2. So when I decided to sit down and start filming this video, it was originally supposed to be a things you missed about Dragon's Dogma, but I think I've decided to switch it to more of a here's what you can expect out of Dragon's Dogma 2 to appeal to newer audiences or people who don't really know any of the really complicated, almost hidden lore behind the Dragon's Dogma series. People who don't know like what Dark Arisen means and why it's different than Dragon's Dogma. People who don't know that there's a Dragon's Dogma online. People who didn't see the webcomics, and people who didn't see like the Netflix anime special. So there's a pre-established world of Dragon's Dogma, and I'm just here to give a little bit of context to new viewers and new gamers who were really intrigued by the Dragon's Dogma trailer, and they were like, damn, this fucking game looks amazing, you know? So here we go. So in the first scene, we see a quote come across the screen and a griffin riding over the ocean with two people on its back. This is pretty significant because in the first Dragon's Dogma game, there's a quote at the beginning of the game as well, and it reflects the plot or what is to be revealed about the series in a very artistic, metaphorical kind of way. I did a little bit of research, and the quote is actually from a French poet and writer named Honoré de Balzac, and he is basically known for writing this 91-part collection of short stories. People call it a romantic epic, and he explores lots of different themes. I don't read French, so I can't really verify any of this information, but a quick Wikipedia search, you'll see that Balzac really absolutely hates capitalism. He preferred the way things were under the monarchy, when people were at their own social proclivities, you know what I mean? That being successful relied on who you knew and how you got there. And he really hates money and power. One of the quotes from his book is, "At the origin of every fortune is lies in crime." So Dragon's Dogma is really interesting because it heavily explores the themes of corruption and power and what people do with that power. In the first game, the quote was, let me see if I can find the translation for it. It says, "the delightful and ever novel pleasure of a useless occupation." So that generally has been speculated to or talked about to reflect the gods of the Dragon's Dogma universe. People saying that they view humans as lesser beings, and that only the people who have the will and the desire to do something great will be able to achieve it. But one of the options that the dragon gives you is to sacrifice your loved one and give up your emotions, basically your ability to love, in exchange for power. So this dynamic of people's will being tested is really prevalent through the first game, and hopefully with this quote from du Balzac, we'll get another look at that same power dynamic of people really fighting with each other for power. I mean, we saw that clip in the commercial of the throne room, right? Of the guy sitting on the throne, and it gives this very eerie energy to the Dragon's Dogma 2 trailer. This is mirrored in the first game, where we learn, spoilers, for the first game, that the Duke is actually an Arisen himself, and that he gave up his love and his ability to love for a position of power as the Duke. So here we see him with a beating heart. It just feels very ominous. He's got pawns around him, or a faction of an archer, a mage, and a warrior, and he's sitting on the throne, and he gives this look, this smirk of like evil. So we can sort of tell that we're going to be seeing more themes around corruption and the imbalance of power in the Dragon's Dogma 2 universe. Now, we're going to get into the Griffin a little bit here. The Griffin in the first game is only ever an enemy. So seeing people ride a Griffin casually here is strange. And what's really cool about the Griffin in the background is that, first of all, the graphics look amazing. Like this Griffin is absolutely to die for on the new RE engine. And what's really exciting is the two people on the back. We did a lot of fighting with Griffins in the first game, and I'm assuming people didn't just ride him off into the sunset because it was impossible. So it's really cool that we see travel via Griffin in this game. It's just going to be a really cool concept. I doubt that it's going to be like a constant thing. I doubt they're just going to be like, here's a Griffin to ride whenever you want to, but I'm looking forward to see how the Griffin plays into transporting. It might be like something to Blue Moon Tower, which is a location from the first game, or it could be to the final boss fight, or it could just be part of the fast travel mechanic. I'm not quite sure yet, because we don't have any defined parameters. The next thing we'll notice is the shot of the cart next to the wheel, and in the background you'll see a little animal flapping its wings. That's a harpy. So if you don't know anything about Dragon's Dogma, you can glean from the title, Dragon, that it's a fantasy RPG game, right? And Dogma means like a belief system. The game really focuses on the repeating cyclical patterns of the dragon and why he comes to Grand Soren and why he constantly plagues the land and why he even chooses an Arisen in the first place. If you want some more insight into that, I'd recommend watching the Rift YouTube channel. He does a lot of lore-based videos, so if you're looking to get into the general idea of the dynamics of testing the Arisen's will, the Rift is a great YouTube channel to check out. He has another YouTube video from over 3 years ago, or just about 3 years ago, where he explains the test of will that the dragon gives you, basically. It's at the very bottom of his page. It's like his second ever video, Story of the Endless Cycle, from 3 years ago. It's a really informative video. He has a lot of references. He's built an entire database on Dragon's Dogma lore that people can go and reference. So if you haven't seen his YouTube video, go check him out. But in this game, you're going to fight a shit ton of fantasy monsters. There's harpies, and like we saw in the trailer, there's goblins, there's this little rock monster, and that is actually called a golem in Dragon's Dogma 1. That's a creature from Dragon's Dogma 1. We see a magic archer shooting a minotaur-like creature. We see cyclopes. We see monsters that I personally haven't seen before, along with griffins, trolls, the works. Also in this first scene, we see a little cart. People have been talking about how it looks like it's from the first game, because in the first game there was a mission where you had to guide an ox cart to the main city in order to progress into the plot of the game, in order to have the Duke notice you and to push the plot further along. But people hated this quest. It takes like 9 minutes, and if that really, because God, the cart is just so slow. So it's become this huge meme in the community, and when people saw this cart, they were like joking, they were like, oh fuck, like the ox cart is back, great. The next thing that we see in the trailer is like this aerial shot, and this town doesn't look particularly familiar to me, and I've played Dragon's Dogma for about 5 years now, and I haven't really gotten into the online game because until a couple of years ago it was only available in Japanese. But we see different biomes, so we see back here this like red desert area, and we see bridges and water canals. This gives the aqueducts give me Roman vibes, which isn't necessarily something that matches with the French architecture style of the last game. But what I really want to focus on is right here in this corner. This is Blue Moon Tower. This is the location from the first game, or it at least resembles Blue Moon Tower. It's a location from the first game where we have this big fight against the Griffin, and it is this big, huge battle, and you end up like destroying half of the tower. It's just really awesome, and it's really cool to see that we'll be remaining in a similar geographical location as the first game. So that's why people are so hyped about seeing the location for the first time. I know it's weird, people are like, ooh, geography, you know what I mean? But that's why I mentioned it. It's going to be really interesting to see our main character return to a land that looks familiar, that looks the same. I think it's going to be interesting regardless, so I'm really excited for it. The next thing we see is this girl, and she has a bow and arrow, but we're not really given that much context about who she is or what she does. So this could be a pawn, this could be an NPC. As far as we know, this is just some lady, you know what I mean? That's all that we can really speculate. The next we see this little dragon claw with a heart on the end of it. This is important because basically the dragon, when he seeks to find somebody of ironclad will, he will go and he will attack a village, and the person who stands up to him sort of makes the dragon pause and think about this person's will and their ambitions, because if they have the will to protect their loved ones and their family, then he wants to test that will. So what he does is he knocks you down and he rips out your heart, just like the first game, it looks like. So we're staying very true to the concept of Dragon's Dogma. He'll rip out your heart, and you'll survive. But when you wake up, you'll hear the dragon say, like in your mind, he'll say, "Come and face me." And this is where the whole dragon's bargain comes in, because you have like 4 different options of ways that you can take the bargain from the dragon. And if you want some more insight into that, I would recommend watching this video called Dragon's Dogma Lore You Should Know, made by The Rift. It's really nice. He talks about the Grigori himself, and how he was imbued into this cycle, and how he's been plagued as being the dragon for thousands of years. And I can't really go into explanations about the plot and the articles that Dragon's Dogma 1, the first edition of the series, can really offer us, but I'd recommend watching the Rift YouTube channel. The next person we see is a lady, with a white mark on her hand, or a gold mark on her hand, and she's putting her hand up as like a sign of, like, to show the mark off. This is a mark that pawns have that directly connects them to the Arisen. So in the first game, when we got our first pawn, his name was Rook, and what he did was he showed you the sign and he offered his assistance to the Arisen. So as the Arisen, your will is strong, as deemed by the dragon. So with your will, you are allowed to have control over pawns, and pawns are emotionless beings whose only purpose is to serve as helpers to the newly arisen, give him tips, fight the dragons and such. And you'll see here in the background a lion man. This was one of the original idea concepts for the first game, which is why people are excited to see it. There was supposed to be a whole bestiary race, and sadly, because of budget cuts and time restraints from Capcom, they weren't able to fully flesh out the idea. So what people are most excited for is a fully fleshed out idea of what Dragon's Dogma could have been. Same thing with the next scene where we see a lion man with a full mane. They're just showing the variety of character customizations that you can make to your character. Now this next scene is a little ambiguous even for people who played the first game. It's a silhouette with a griffin riding away on it, and it pans to the face of a person in a cloak. This leads me to believe that they're connected to the first scene and that this person sends you off on griffin back, but of course we can't really verify that information, so people are just excited that you can run with it, you know? In the next scene of importance that I really want to point out, we see this knight, and we see him lunge forward to attack this goblin, right? And we see him stab him. And this might seem like something really small that you're just like, cool, you get to fight them, but people are excited for this specific like 5 frames of the trailer, because in the first game you had specific movesets that you could do that were prevalent to your vocation, your class. So this guy is carrying a shield and a sword, so he closely resembles the fighter class from the first game. And you have these movesets that you can do by pressing a combination of buttons. Basically, people are really excited that we have returning moves to the game from the first game. And then in the background here we see an archer. We don't know if it's a pawn or an NPC, but he jumps off of the back of a goblin, does a 360, and then shoots another goblin. So we're really excited about having even more movesets and more ideas and brand new concepts to the game entirely. Alright, let's take a second to talk magic. So here in this scene, we see some sort of telekinetic power where he picks up the goblins and he smashes them up against the rocks of opponents. And this is a spell that we have not seen before, so people are super hyped about what the different classes and what the different magic could look like. Because further on in the commercial, we see a magic archer, and this is from the first game, and this looks very similar to a move from the first game. It's called the heptad shot, I believe. So people are really excited for fire spells, people are really excited for building bridges, it seems like, which is really, really cool. There's a light spell that we have never seen before. This looks similar to a magic archer ability from the first game, but other than that, we can't really. The main point is that we're seeing new spells, we're seeing old spells, and we see this mage build an entire bridge, and she has a caster with her, which is a religious item. It's a religious symbol. Usually, or from what I've seen in Catholicism, it holds incense, and it's meant to be swung, and it's meant to cleanse the air, or it's meant to get people in the mood for worship. It's meant to stabilize them. And then we see this really cool spell here called, in the first game, called Bolide. And Bolide basically is a spell that sorcerers can have, and it calls down meteors from the sky to crash into your opponents. So again, this idea of returning spells. We get a brand new city, it looks like. We've never seen this city before, and a return of the dragon. Now, people are excited because of this dragon, because in the first game, the dragon was named Grigori. And if you went and checked out the Rift YouTube video, or if you have it queued up, you'll understand why it's significant that the dragon may or may not be the same dragon. That could dictate whether or not this game is a prequel, whether it's a sequel, or whether it takes place thousands of years in the future or the past, or if we're in a parallel universe. Because in the original concept art and concept ideas of Dragon's Dogma, when you go to fight the Seneschal after you defeat the dragon, you're supposed to enter a column, and this column is supposed to exist through all dimensions. It's supposed to be an area, a circular, like, like a cylinder almost that pierces through all space and time that was created by the Sinistral so that you could go face him. So that's why we would think that it would be an alternate dimension. Alright, this video is getting pretty long, so I am going to rapid fire through the rest of the trailer. We're going to have a little lightning round, and I am just going to explain the context of smaller details about the trailer itself. Next we see a guy fighting a griffin, stabbing him in the neck. Climbing on monsters and grappling monsters is something that's it calls back to the first game where you could climb on top of a cyclops and you could like stab its eye. Climbing on top of monsters, hitting weak points, it's very pertinent to the game, and people are excited to see that coming back, that they haven't really strayed from the original idea of combat in this game. This is a troll. As you can see, people are excited because we can see this warrior in the bottom right. He launches this assassin to the troll's face, and the troll gets stumbled. As you can see, we're really excited for new interactions with monsters and the way that you fight them. We're excited for this very adaptive AI that we didn't really see too much of in the first game, but that's because it was released in 2012 on the PS3. You know what I mean? It's not going to have this RE engine coding and smoothness and the really adaptive AI. As we can see here, this staff is actually from the first game. It's called the Grievous Horns. So we're seeing a return of weapons as well. And back in the past, the guy who levitates his enemies, super cool, but we see that he's wearing an armor set called the Paladin's Cloak, I believe, from the first game. So we're seeing returning textures, we're seeing returning weapons, so we're hoping that this game doesn't really stray too far from the original idea and concept of what Dragon's Dogma 2 should have been. And we're really excited for this destructible like terrain, this interactive terrain where if somebody were to hit the pillar, then the bridge would break. Super interesting, super cool. I don't know what this is, but I'm excited for it. This is a Rift Crystal. So in the first game, how you would enlist pawns, remember how we talked about the girl with the lines on her hands? You get 3 of those in the original game. You get 1 that you're able to customize completely and fully yourself, and then you get 2 that you can rent from other players. So other players who have designed their own pawns and gave them their own specific moveset with their own armor and their own weapons and their own curatives and all this extra stuff. You have to go to the rift, to these rocks, to access it. And that was something that was shown in the first game, and we're hoping is prevalent in the second game as well. And it is, because we're seeing new animations for interacting with the rift stone. This Gorgon looks super cool. People tell me all the time, and I've seen on Reddit, that this is from Dragon's Dogma Online. So as you can see, they're not really showing us any new monsters. They're just showing off the engine. You know what I mean? This is a completely graphic, like a graphical update for the people who have been following this game. But it looks absolutely immaculate. I mean, imagine like cutting off a Gorgon's head in a video game. Like, that shit hits. That's so cool. And this right here, I've been told online, it's the Sphinx from Dragon's Dogma Online. So being able to interact with creatures of mythology, from all types of different mythology too, is going to be super cool. And in the concept art, we actually see even more monsters, and even more, they're like bigger, they carry giant clubs, and it's turning out to be a huge Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy RPG that is Soulsborne in nature. It's gonna be so unique. It's going to be a trend-setting game, and the whole point of me doing this video is that you can see and understand why people are so excited about the Dragon's Dogma 2 remake, because it's just some shitty game from 2012 that was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360, right? Absolutely not. People love this game. I'm willing to die for this game. And I mean, just look at this guy. I'd die for him, and I don't even know who he is, but he's hot, and that's all I care about. I'll buy this game. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you got some more much needed context for this video game. Definitely check out Dragon's Dogma. Check out Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. It's the added DLC to the first game. Take a peek at Dragon's Dogma Online, the webcomic. The Netflix anime doesn't really do a good job of portraying the lore or the dynamics between an Arisen and their pawn. But definitely check out the Rift. His YouTube channel is chock full of information, and I learn stuff from him just about every single day. Consider liking this video and subscribing, obviously, because I'm trying to just spread the word about Dragon's Dogma and get the hype started, because this game deserves it. These people are passionate, and they have an idea and a vision for a game, and we're finally seeing the follow through. I'm so excited. Anyway, I'm Octave, and I hope you have a good night.